Today we're going to practice solving linear inequality systems using the OMG math method. The first thing we observe when we look at this problem is that it asks us to solve this system of inequalities by graphing. We observe that we are given 3 linear inequalities to graph. Our mission is to graph these 3 equations and find their solution. For inequalities, that means where the common section is shaded. Our game plan is to graph all 3 equations on the same xy plane. We should notice that each of our equations is in slope-intercept form, so we're going to be able to use slope and intercept to graph. One of the key points we need to know when graphing inequalities is right here. If we have an inequality that does not have or equals to, we use a dotted line. If we have an inequality that does have or equals to, we use a solid line. I'm going to graph each equation in a different color so that we don't get confused. The first one I'm going to graph, I'm going to put 3 over 1 because I do not have a run for slope. And then I'm going to graph my first point. My first point, my y-intercept, is the last number, which starts me off at 1. Since my slope is a positive 3 over a positive 1, I go up 1, 2, 3, and I go over 1. For these ones, we're going to need to make sure we are really good at plotting points. So I'm going to plot a couple points for each graph. And then I'm going to do my best, which is difficult, but I'm going to do my best to draw the correct line through this. Since I have an inequality that does not have a line underneath, I am going to use a dotted line to draw my line through my points. Then I go on to my next graph. My next graph is y is greater than or equal to 2x. I don't have a y-intercept. If I don't have a y-intercept, that means it's 0. So I'm going to put 0 here, and then again I don't have a run. Since 2 over 1 is the same as 2, I'm going to give myself a run of 1. So I'm going to start at 0, and since they're both positive, I go up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. I'm going to go the other direction as well. And since I have a line underneath, that means I'm using a solid line. So I'm going to use a solid line to graph through these points. After spending about 10 minutes trying to graph it myself, I am just going to use a graphing tool to actually graph the line through these points. Since it is solid, it works for this one. So I'm going to graph a solid line through these points. Then I'm going to graph my last equation. I'm going to graph this one right here. My starting point for this one, my y-intercept, is going to be 3, since that's the last number. And then again, I don't have a run, so make sure you put it over 1 if there's no run given. So I'm going to start at 3, 1, 2, 3. Since my run is negative, that means I'm going down and over. So I go down 1, 2, 3 over 1, 1, 2, 3 over 1, and then the other direction. Again, I'm going to use my graphing tool to create my line for this one because I am terrible at drawing lines. And I draw a line through these points. Okay, now the hardest part with doing something like this is seeing your shading. It's really difficult because we have such small intersections. So now that I have my points graphed, I'm going to go through, starting with my first one, and draw arrows to where it would be shaded. Since my y values are less than, I know that I'm going to be shading down. So I'm going to be shading down for all of my points. Everything is going to go down since it's less than. Since my y value for the second one is greater than, I'm going to be shading up, shading up, shading up. Then for the green one, it's less than as well, so I know I'm going to be shading down. So I'm going to just draw arrows instead of trying to shade. Although it's really hard to see on this graph, we notice that all three arrows come together about right here. So this part right here, this little shaded part, is my solution. To see a better diagram of it, I've graphed it on a graphing program for you to see. So this portion right here, this is where all three areas are shaded. So this is my solution if you see it on a graphing program that makes it a little clearer. So this tiny little portion right here is the solution to the problem. And that is how you solve systems of inequalities by graphing.
Thank you guys so much for watching my videos. If you want to get better at math, subscribe to my videos here. If you want more information on math, click on my website link here.